And a good Tuesday morning to you, Central Georgia. Thanks for tuning in for a look at your extended forecast. Have a good bit to talk about in terms of our potential for seeing some strong storms, maybe even some severe ones during the overnight and early morning hours heading into tomorrow. But then after that, the rest of your Wednesday all the way through the rest of your work week, maybe even a little bit into the weekend, is going to trend mighty nice forecast wise. So let's go ahead and jump into our headlines. A warm day today is once again the story. Pretty hot, pretty humid, especially for temperatures in the low 90s that feel more like the mid 90s. It's not as warm as it could be and not as warm as it was maybe this time in years past. However, it is still yet another day that is going to welcome in some pretty warm temperatures, and that humidity has definitely been a big talking point as of recently. Possible storms tomorrow, and obviously you note I said tomorrow. It's the early morning hours of tomorrow is when we're looking at the potential for storms. After we get into the later morning hours, we will see conditions clear out. So most of your Wednesday, especially if you're not awoken by a couple rumbles of thunder, is actually going to trend mighty nice, and you may not notice it rained whatsoever. So it will be a little bit cooler to end the week. That's when we're talking about this frontal boundary that's driving this line of showers and storms. That's going to move through, and that's going to lead the way to some drier and cooler air that's going to filter in, and that's going to set the stage for hopefully a nice weekend forecast. So let's take it around to our sky cams all across central Georgia. Clear blue skies up in downtown Macon. The same story down at the Georgia National Fairgrounds. Looks like a couple of our bird friends are hanging out enjoying some of that sunshine. Up in downtown Dublin, a very clear image right there. The grass is looking very green, lots of blue skies, and plenty of blue skies down in Warner Robins at CGTC as well. Quite a different story than what we had maybe even about 2 or 3 hours ago with some cloudy skies. That was what we were walking out to with first light in the sky. So good to see that cloud cover clearing, but now that is going to lead the way into the temperature increase as we go into the afternoon hours. So still some areas holding on to the 70s. A 73, definitely an outlier over there in Thomaston. 77s for Forsyth, Roberta down to Butler. And then you're welcoming in some 80s the farther east that you are. Somewhere around 80, 81 like Monticello, Macon, and Warner Robins. 84 up in Milledgeville, 82 in Sparta, 83 in Eatonton. I believe Milledgeville takes the cake for the warmest temperature here, getting close to the 11 a.m. hour. But it is pretty muggy. We've continued to see this dark green color, the swampy air that you can wear, build into the forecast because we continue to have these southwesterly winds, and that's ushering in some of that Gulf moisture down from the southwest. So we are seeing dew point temperatures somewhere maybe even as high as the mid 70s the farther east and northeast that you do live. Some areas slightly drier, maybe over in Upson County where the dew point temperatures are 68 degrees, but it's still a noticeable humidity as you head out the door. So your feels like temperatures, some areas are already feeling like the 90s so far today. Feels like 91 up in Milledgeville, 93 in Gordon, and then most everyone else feeling like the 80s, or you're still feeling pretty true to your actual temperature in Upson County. Thomaston definitely the outlier right now. Still a bit cooler and feeling pretty pleasant if you're heading outside in Thomaston and anywhere else in Upson County this Tuesday morning. How about your winds and your wind gusts? Maybe an occasional gust up to about 14 miles per hour. That's as high as we do see right now up in Baldwin County, but more blue colors on this map than what we saw yesterday, especially down to the south and the southwest of central Georgia. Areas to the west of I-75 like Macon County, Dooley County, down to Crisp County. And we do see that breeze steady about 5 to 8, maybe 9 miles per hour. The winds will be a little bit gusty this afternoon, but more so tomorrow and Thursday after the passage of this frontal boundary because it's going to be a fairly quick mover as it makes its way through central Georgia. So let's take a look at your satellite and radar picture, getting a brief glimpse of that cloud cover that crowded the morning hours. That's continuing to move out towards the east, and we don't see anything really crowding the picture on this image in the entire state of Georgia. However, as we go into the nighttime hours, north and northwest Georgia is going to be the first, or are going to be the first areas to see some of that messy weather approach courtesy of that frontal boundary, and we'll show you that in just one second. But right now, here is where it is currently located. It is draping from the south of this low pressure center that's kind of centered on the corners of Missouri, up into Nebraska, Kansas, and the state of Iowa. There's the cold front down to the south of it, and it's going to start to pop up some precipitation way ahead of it. Right now, everything that you see that is forming some active weather, especially some severe thunderstorm warnings, like what you see down here in southern Tennessee, all the way back into Texas, that's actually courtesy of what we call those outflow boundaries that you'll see us referring to a lot more as we get into the summertime months. That's just kind of a gust that goes away from the actual frontal boundary, but it does still have enough lift ahead of it. It's not the frontal boundary itself. That will kick into gear and that will continue to push some of the active weather we already have in other states this morning into our picture and to our neck of the woods as we go into the later hours of today. So yesterday's almanac, we climbed to a high temperature exactly 90 degrees, so a couple degrees above average. It felt even warmer though. I took a look at the observation station. I think we had feels like numbers as high as 95 and 96 yesterday, showing you the role that humidity can play on these temperatures, because 95 to 96 definitely starts to feel a good deal warmer than just 90 degrees that could be paired up with dry air. Still nowhere near the record, 98 degrees back in 1965. Very, very thankful that we did not get to that threshold. I was talking a little bit about it this morning. We're getting into high school graduation season. And I remember when I graduated high school down at the Georgia National Fairgrounds, those temperatures were probably somewhere in the mid-90s. It definitely felt more like it was 100 degrees outside. So it's not out of the realm of possibility to definitely get those triple-digit feels like temperatures. We're going to be very thankful that we're continuing to keep those out of the forecast. So going throughout today, the entire day on Tuesday is going to be a very nice one. The clouds have already started to clear, so going to be a dry day in terms of no rain chances. Obviously not going to feel very dry. I just showed you the dew point temperatures and how humid we are. 92 degrees for a high temperature. That would be 5 degrees above average for this time of year. But once again, it's a day that you want to know how it actually feels outside. And there are going to be some outliers. There are going to be some numbers on that feels like temperature map that get above what you see here. This is kind of taking into account the observations at Middle Georgia Regional Airport. That's where we get our data for Macon. So maybe topping out somewhere as high as the mid-90s for the heat indices. Some areas in those outliers can definitely get up into the upper 90s, just depending on how much moisture you have present in your area and how high those temperatures do get. Like we were talking about in Milledgeville and Gordon, those areas are already feeling above the 90-degree mark. So I wouldn't be surprised to see those two maybe pop up some 97s, some 98s for what it feels like outside, just because their dew point temperatures are a little bit higher. And the higher that you go for the dew point temperatures, it's kind of an exponential increase for those heat indices. So maybe a difference between 73 degrees for your dew point temperature and the difference between 75 degrees for your dew point temperature is going to be pretty exponential for these heat indices. So day one storm outlook, that's what we need to talk about. And remember yesterday I was talking about these outlooks. They go from 8 a.m. the day that they're issued all the way to 8 a.m. the next day. So this day one outlook does of course go for Tuesday. It started at 8 a.m. this morning and it's going to go all the way until 8 a.m. tomorrow morning. Now when we talk about the timing, this system is going to roll through during the early morning hours, sometime around 2, maybe 3 a.m., go all the way until we get to about 7 a.m., right at the tail end of this day one storm outlook. And you obviously are seeing your greater risk of severe weather, states like Tennessee, up into Kentucky, Mississippi, Alabama, Northwest Georgia. All these areas are in a level 3. And as you go out of this level 3 shaded area, you'll see a level 2 surrounding it in yellow, and then eventually a level 1 in green. So if we zoom in here on central Georgia, you will see that most of our northwestern counties are falling within this level 1 threshold. A level 2 has been extended into maybe our northernmost county, mainly just most of Jasper County. It could be clipping parts of Lamar County, clipping parts of Putnam County up here northwest of Eatonton. Once again, the severe weather is not going to obey these boundaries that we do give them. It is just kind of showing where the most confidence is of these areas, maybe seeing some more severe weather than areas farther down into the level 1. So the potential threats we're looking at for central Georgia are going to be gusty winds and some small hail embedded within some strong to maybe even some severe thunderstorms. There is a risk of some brief tornadoes. However, that is going to be much more likely up in the northwest corner of the state and up into the metro Atlanta area as opposed to down here, down I-75. So that's what we're really looking at. And the good news is this is more of a nocturnal event. These overnight risks are never the best thing because obviously you're fast asleep. You may not be able to hear those alerts. However, the good news is most of you already are in the safety of your home and you're not going to have to worry about anything. And like I said, there's still a good chance that we don't see anything or you don't see anything, and you may not even get woken up by any of those rumbles of thunder if you're a hard sleeper like myself. It's all going to depend on where you are and what this line does do as it does come through central Georgia. So now I take you to the day 2 outlook, which will start at 8 a.m. tomorrow. That's when we're already looking at this boundary to kind of move out of the picture. This level 1 risk does go from West Virginia all the way down the Atlantic coast of the United States, and South and Southeast Georgia find themselves in that level 1 risk for tomorrow. That's mainly going to be during the afternoon hours tomorrow. So giving you a good idea that we are going to see this frontal boundary push through, and it is going to continue its path down out of central Georgia by tomorrow morning. And the good news is, if we take it back actually to this level 1 risk, I did want to mention this a little bit as well. You do see a weakening trend. You see a level 3, then down to a level 2, and then eventually down to a level 1 here in central Georgia. So this line is going to weaken, and that's mainly due to the fact that it's not going to have as much to work with in terms of instability, something that these thunderstorms and any form of severe weather desperately needs to keep going and to keep rolling on like a train. We aren't really looking at a very sufficient environment. It's going to be a more stable atmosphere in central Georgia because we will start to see those temperatures cool down, and that alone is going to result in not a lot of surface heating like you would see at 3 o'clock, 4 o'clock, 5 o'clock in the afternoon when your temperatures are the warmest, when you have the most moisture content in your atmosphere. So that's why we do continue to see a weakening trend with the outlooks, and you will see this translated amongst future view as well. So let's go ahead and play it through this. Let's go all the way through this afternoon. So for your 5 o'clock commute home, it is looking all good to go. Maybe a few clouds in the sky, a steady humid breeze. It's going to be a warm one, definitely an afternoon that you're going to want to crank that AC up, or maybe go ahead and remote start your car to get the AC going before you head out there, especially if you have a black interior like myself in your car, because that is just going to absorb any type of heat that we do get throughout today. But we can already see an active picture in the top left of the screen, states like Tennessee, states like Mississippi. We continue to see this line get pretty good organization as it moves through Alabama, pretty continuous line with plenty of dark red patches indicating, number one, some pretty heavy rainfall. We obviously know that we get good amounts of rainfall really quickly associated with strong and severe thunderstorms. We saw that come to fruition over the past week, or past weekend rather, I should say. But we can see some breaks in this line, especially up in northern Alabama, maybe even up into northern Georgia. This isn't exactly definitive of what's going to happen, but it is a good sign. Number one, we can see that this doesn't look as intense as we go into the nighttime hours. This is 11 p.m. later on tonight, and it does look like maybe even most of northern Georgia is kind of left out of seeing anything in the way of some active weather. But we go into about 3 a.m. I want to say probably we'll take it back to somewhere between 1 and 2. That's what it's looking like, at least according to this model run, the future view, the graph model that we typically show you every single day. If this line is to hold together, which future view does not think it is going to do, I think the timing that it would start to creep into our north and our northwesternmost counties would probably be somewhere between the 1 a.m. and the 2 a.m. hour, probably trending a little bit later towards the 2 a.m. hour. And that's when you'll probably start to hear things get a little bit messy outside. However, if this goes according to this model run, it would be no complaints whatsoever by any means. We are still in a severe weather outlook, so obviously we do see a lot of people thinking, and a lot of people at the National Weather Service thinking, that severe weather will still try to hold together as it does make its way into central Georgia. But if this happens, then obviously you will just have a nice and a restful night, not see anything maybe in the way of rain until you head out the door and you may see a few water droplets on your windshield. But actually, future view, the last 2 runs ever since I've come into work this morning have seen a drastic weakening trend with this line as it does make its push into the state of Georgia. So this is 6 a.m. Let's take it to about 7, 8 a.m., about the time many of you are starting to wake up and may be seeing some isolated light showers and sprinkles. But other than that, it is looking like things are very calm. Obviously, fairly windy with these wind arrows getting a little bit longer, a little bit more yellow in color. We'll talk about the winds in just 1 second. But then as this boundary does continue to southward push, our southern counties could start to see a flare up in activity depending on where the boundary is. If it's already pushed through central Georgia, then we're going to be all dry and good to go. Areas ahead of that actual boundary are still going to have sufficient lift. And as the temperatures start to get warmer tomorrow, that's when we look at like activity is going to start to sprout back up. But once again, mainly in the southern portion of the state and the southeastern portion of the state, closer to the Atlantic coast. That's what you saw in that day 2 outlook, where you saw that level 1 shaded area for South Georgia and Southeast Georgia, and continuing all the way up the Atlantic coast, where still you see some rain showers starting to sprout up in areas like North Carolina. Now we go all the way through the rest of your Wednesday, a windy afternoon, but it should be nice and clear because that drier air will finally make its presence known and will start to usher in. Let's take it to Thursday morning. You see a good cluster of showers up to the north and the northwest of us. That will lose its steam because once again, this is kind of trying to roll through during that cooler portion of the morning. And we actually will start to already have some of that cooler air filter in behind the front. So it's really not going to have a lot to work with. Don't think that comes to fruition in central Georgia. Thursday afternoon, mostly sunny, shaping up to be a nice one. And then going overnight into early morning on Friday. Wouldn't rule out maybe seeing a couple of light showers as you wake up Friday morning. However, this is just what one model run says. This is out pretty far in the future, at least about 3 days and maybe some change. So it is looking like we have the possibility of a few sprinkles in the early morning hours on Friday as it stands right now. I'm not going to go throw a 10% chance of rain, however, on that, because that would maybe last about an hour or two, fizzle out. And then you would be saying, hey, what about that 10% chance of rain? Obviously, most people probably wouldn't be able to get that. But this is what one model run says. So let's take it to another model run and let's see how the high-res model does resolve all of this. So as we go into the overnight hours, this is about 1 a.m. overnight tonight. So many of you already fast asleep. A lot better organization of at least the rain holding together. However, not seeing too dark of colors, maybe those dark reds, those pinks enveloped within this high-res model as it does begin its push into central Georgia. But you can see them flashing up occasionally. But once again, hinting at the same thing. This line is going to break apart as it moves into central Georgia. It does look like more areas would get some rain according to this resolution right here. But the good news is we see a lot of those darker colors stay out of the central Georgia area. And then by the time we go to tomorrow morning, some rain lingering the farther south that you live, some partly cloudy skies. That will eventually move out of the picture going into your Wednesday afternoon and evening. And then that would take us all the way into Thursday, where it's still looking to be pretty dry. So our rainfall graphic right here is going to go according to what the graph model did say. You see that logo right behind my head. And yes, this is going to go along with the first future view I showed you. If that situation plays out, we would have minuscule amounts of rain in some areas. That might be our far southern counties. It might just be some isolated areas that see a sprinkle or two. Not looking like impressive rainfall totals whatsoever. But I will say, when I was looking at this yesterday, and we actually did see that line hold together until it got about halfway through central Georgia, we were seeing amounts up to about a ½ inch, maybe an inch of rainfall if you do get a really strong or a severe thunderstorm that does roll over your area. So we could see maybe rainfall amounts up to that. However, we're going to keep our fingers crossed that we don't have to deal with anything in the way of severe weather. And we've gotten plenty of rain over the last week or two. So we've finally put that number back above average. We talk about it all the time here on the extended forecast. I think we could go with a good dry stretch and be just fine. We might pop down right below average, but then our next rainmaker should probably arrive as we get into the beginning of next week. And I'll talk about that as we head to the long-range models in just 1 second. So speaking of the winds, that's probably going to be the main thing you're going to notice. Number one, this afternoon, pretty steady breeze, some occasional gusts up to 20 miles per hour. They will start to maybe break apart a little bit before that main line does come through. I'm going to drag it back just a little bit because you're going to see where this line is indicated by these kind of patches of red, maybe even some pink. Locally heavy gusts are what we're looking at. So that's going to be where your severe thunderstorms, your strong thunderstorms do pop up. You're going to have your gusty winds within those. So as we go overnight, some occasional gusts up to 20, 25, maybe even close to 30 miles per hour, depending on where you do live. And then after that, we get a little bit of a break, maybe a couple hours before that front does continue to move off the Atlantic coast. And yes, tomorrow afternoon is going to be a breezy one. Still seeing some gusts that can get up to 30 miles per hour. But not only just tomorrow afternoon, the winds build back into the picture after going down just a little bit in speed overnight into early morning Thursday. Thursday afternoon is looking to be a pretty breezy one as well. Not quite as gusty as what Wednesday afternoon will have, but occasional gusts up to 20 or 25 miles per hour will be possible. Probably making for a bit of a bad hair day. And then I think as we head into the weekend, we can kind of get the winds out of here, and then the nice conditions will really settle in. So today is really the only day that we're really looking at the humidity and those dew points to be at semi-high levels. So you see right here, dew points in the 60s are a noticeable humidity, but I did just show you that dew point temperature map, and it's more looking like the very muggy area, that dark green color. So maybe take this line and move it up one category box or so. We will continue to see this dive down. After that front passes, drier air will filter in, and it will continue to make its presence known for at least the first part of the weekend. Once we get to Saturday, we will finally see this go back up and climb back up the ladder into Sunday and Monday, and that's when our rain chances are looking a little more impressive. So that humidity does give us a good picture of what's actually going on in terms of the dew point temperatures and how much moisture we have available, and that can correlate to our rain chances a lot of the time. 9 a.m. for your Wednesday. So this is right after the front is passed. The very, very muggy air is going to be down to the south and the southeast of us, but we just continue to see these areas of no color whatsoever filter in by the time we get to Wednesday afternoon. It's still going to be a bit muggy, a noticeable humidity as you head out the door tomorrow morning, but Wednesday afternoon, that's when the drier air is finally going to filter in. And as you can see on the scale up here in the top right, the dark green is the swampy air. The not too bad is to the areas of light green, which is kind of dominating this map right now. But when you get areas of no color, that's going to indicate some pretty dry air. I mean, dew points down into the 40s. That's what we typically talk about when we're in the cooler months of the year, the fall season, the winter season, and maybe still holding on to a bit of that early spring weather in terms of what the dew point temperatures are, but no complaints whatsoever. The drier we are, the less moisture that we have, that means the less chance at rain we are going to have. And that continues to really make its presence known. It fluctuates between areas of no color and some light green and tries to start maybe building back in by the time we go into Friday, but I don't think it's really going to be very conducive whatsoever for sprouting those kind of heat of the day or pop-up showers, maybe even a thunderstorm like we have been talking about in this bit of an early summertime stretch. So let's go into your weekend. Memorial Day weekend, graduation weekend for many. It is a big weekend for outdoor plans, I know. Well, I'm keeping my fingers crossed that it does continue to play out like this, because this will be mighty splendid, especially given that the last 2 weekends we've had thunderstorms, we've had plenty of rain. We definitely deserve a nice weekend for all of these outdoor plans. Friday afternoon, looking like a great day, maybe not even a single cloud in the sky. Some rain trying to creep into the picture, maybe for parts of Saturday. If anything is to pop up, it's still not looking too impressive or too widespread. This is Saturday at 7 p.m. and it still looks like we are remaining mostly dry. Sunday, as we head into the evening hours, there's plenty of rain to the north, plenty of rain over to the west. Doesn't look like any of those shaded areas creep down into central Georgia necessarily. But by the time we get to Memorial Day Monday, that moisture does look to creep back into the forecast, maybe mainly to the north of us. It looks like the rain chances for Memorial Day are a lot greater up to the Atlanta area, states to the north of us, states to the west of us. Not quite making it to central Georgia yet, but this will continue to fluctuate pretty drastically as it is almost a week out. But this is where Monday does currently stand, probably your best next best chance at rain, other than the overnight into early morning hours tomorrow. And then we go into Tuesday next week, where we could be setting up another dreary period, but we'll worry about that when we get there. Many of you will have already started summer break, at least in terms of school. Obviously, graduation's happening this weekend, definitely marking the tail end of the school year, the very end of it. But many people probably heading back into town, heading back to work on Tuesday. Some rain is not something that you really want to go back to work with, but that's probably what we're going to be dealing with. So for any travel plans that you do have, planning on traveling back into central Georgia, especially for making those pit stops with the family, stopping at Buc-ee's and such, you're going to want to have the rain gear in the suitcase just to bring out in case you do run into some rain showers as you have to make your stops, you have to get gas, you're maybe just taking a bit of a bathroom break. That's obviously going to be something that you'll want to have handy, especially when you have to run into the gas station, depending on if you come into contact with a heavy shower or not. So the good news is this big hot and humid stretch that we've been under not going to last much longer. We will get some relief in terms of the high temperatures. Temperatures in the 80s starting on Thursday into Friday and Saturday, and definitely not going to be cool per se. It's going to be cooler than what we have been used to, and it will be below average. However, temperatures in the 80s will still make for pretty warm afternoons, a lot more bearable with highs maybe at 84 and 85, paired up with some drier air that makes those temperatures feel a lot truer to their actual values, not feeling a couple degrees warmer at times. Your morning lows, we will actually notice maybe a bit more of a chill in the air for the early morning hours around sunrise. Upper 50s, maybe getting as low as the mid 50s as we kick off Saturday morning. But the good news is the earlier that the sunrise continues to get, that will be the earlier time that we actually hit these values somewhere in the 50s. So if you maybe wake up per se around 9 a.m. or 10 a.m. on Saturday, those temperatures will already be warming up and it will feel pretty pleasant somewhere in the 60s, maybe even flirting with 70 degrees depending on how fast you move up on Saturday and what time you do get out of bed. So here's how your 7 days shapes up. A nice day for the rest of today. So I know we're talking about that overnight and early morning rain and possible storm chance. The rest of today is going to be splendid. So any dinner plans with family, planning on grilling out, looking good to go. It's just going to be pretty hot and humid. And then it could be a bit of a messy picture overnight into early morning tomorrow, probably before many of you even do get up. I know the models didn't say a lot, but we are still under that storm outlook, and it's something that, of course, we'll be here monitoring if we do get any warnings, and obviously make sure that you have a way to receive some alerts if you are to get a warning tonight. You may very well just sleep the entire night, not hear a rumble of thunder, not hear things get messy, not get an alert on your phone, and that's fine. That's always the best case scenario. But just in case you do get a warning pop up wherever you are, obviously we want you to be informed, we want you to be prepared, so have a way to receive any possible warnings that will wake you up, with this being mainly an overnight and early morning thing when you typically are asleep. After we get through that, we go to maybe about 8-9 a.m. tomorrow. We're already going to be clearing out. We may see some light showers hanging around in our far southern counties, but as we continue about the day on Wednesday, it's going to be a mostly nice day. So you will see this icon still tomorrow on your 7-day forecast if you're watching the morning show with me. But as we go into midday and the evening show, yes, we're going to be putting up a nice and sunny icon because conditions will be clearing out, and that's how they're going to remain into your weekend. 88 degrees for a high on Thursday, 84 on Friday, 85 on Saturday. Definitely going to be a beautiful weekend because I know many of the graduations will be happening on Friday and Saturday, especially down in Houston County. So hopefully many of you are treated to some much nicer weather. And if you have a morning graduation, temperatures are going to be fairly close to what those lows are that you do see on the boxes. Maybe a little bit warmer, but definitely nowhere near the mid and upper 80s perhaps. I've gone with a 10% chance of seeing some rain on Saturday and Sunday. We'll get a better idea of that on the short range models when we get closer. Right now we can only go out to about 3 a.m. on Friday. So hopefully we will continue to stay mostly dry, but some scattered light showers, some scattered sprinkles is nothing to cancel any outdoor plans for. And I do believe if you have outdoor plans on Saturday and Sunday, that they are still looking good to go. It's Memorial Day Monday. That's a little iffy right now. I've gone with a better chance of rain because it does look like we have moisture return to the forecast. There are some active systems around the southeast, and I think some of that could creep into central Georgia. So not the most ideal travel forecast for those of you heading back into town and such. Maybe you aren't heading back into town until Tuesday. Well, that rain chance is still kind of looking to linger into the day past the last day of your 7-day forecast. So continue to play that by ear. Hopefully it's just of the shower variety. We're not looking at widespread severe weather by any means, but the main focus will be overnight into early morning tomorrow that you do see that thunderstorm icon. Obviously, like I just said, make sure that you have a way to receive any possible alerts that will wake you up. And what I think that the rain will hold together a little bit better than what the models are saying. We've seen a drastic influx or kind of change in the model runs. When I came in early this morning, it still was holding together, still had some patches of some dark red within it, a continuous line as it made its way through the northwest portion of the state or central Georgia. And then as it made its way farther to the south, it really weakened very quickly. By the next model run, right before the morning show, it had that line breaking apart before it even got here. And then this latest model run that I did just show you, still hinting at the breaking part, but maybe even a little bit earlier than what we saw as of this morning. So the trends are going in the right way. Hopefully we continue to see that, and you don't have to deal with anything that's really going to wake you up, make for a bit of a restless night, but it's something that we still are going to be very diligent to and give proper regard to, given the forecast the last couple of days and the last couple of weeks, really, where we've seen outlooks issued. Maybe something hasn't necessarily panned out. We've seen maybe a minor, a low-end outlook issued, and we've seen plenty of severe thunderstorm warnings or even tornado warnings. But right now, I think a couple of strong storms are still going to be possible overnight into early morning tomorrow. If you take those proper precautions, just continue to go about your normal nightly routine. Hopefully you'll wake up and you won't see anything in the way of rain on your driveway, on your windshield whatsoever. But if things are to get messy, number one, you can obviously check to see if we're going to be live. We will be live if we have anything in the way of severe thunderstorm warnings overnight. We'll be here on the stream, we'll be on Facebook, and I believe we'll be on YouTube as well. But if you hear things get messy outside and you don't necessarily see me on the stream or on YouTube or on Facebook, you can go on our 13 WMAZ Plus app, and we have a live Doppler stream. You can get a real-time look at your temperatures, your current conditions. You can get a real-time look at that radar and kind of see, okay, this is where the thick of the thunderstorm is relative to where I live. You can see the timing of everything. You can continue to see up-to-date graphics that we will play on loop, so that's easily accessible for everyone. It's definitely something I recommend checking out if you don't see maybe myself or maybe Ben Jones doing coverage overnight, because we will be on if there is a warning. That's when obviously we need to keep you informed about something, either if it's a severe thunderstorm warning or anything worse. But I wouldn't rule a couple of severe thunderstorm warnings out of the realm of possibility just yet. Those are just some of the tools and some of the things that you can keep in mind if you do get awoken by maybe a possible warning, or you do hear things get messy outside. Maybe some of your furry friends aren't the best sleepers during some thunderstorms. You can check out that live Doppler stream that we do have on the Plus app here. So hopefully that you all have an amazing Tuesday. Just keep those things in mind as you are heading to bed tonight. And then I hope that many of you just wake up and we didn't really have that much of an active night, but we are still in a storm outlook. Got to remain diligent to the forecast when we do see officials issuing those severe weather outlooks. And as we go into the weekend, there is a whole lot to look forward to in terms of less humidity, in terms of some slightly cooler temperatures, and finally, hopefully some mostly dry weather for Memorial Day festivities and graduation festivities. Thanks for tuning in. We'll be back here at 10:30 once again tomorrow to hopefully wrap up a non-eventful night, but still, if we did get some events in the way of severe weather, then we'll wrap that up too. Thanks for joining in.